Hi, I'm Sharon Martin, and this video is going to give you some introductory information about setting boundaries. So I had a couple of questions from readers about boundaries, and I think they're questions that probably a lot of people can relate to. So I'm going to read the question and then give you a little bit of information and an example of how you can get started. Um, so two people had asked questions about boundaries. The first one was, what are realistic boundaries? I know every situation is different, but in general, how do you begin? And how do you enforce boundaries when somebody crosses the line? And the second question was pretty similar. How do you know when to set a boundary, and how firm should it be? So I'm gonna start with that one. Because when you really are not familiar with boundaries at all, it can be confusing to know, where is the line, right? I know that I need some line, some limit, so that people don't walk all over me. But I really don't have any idea about what's reasonable. Where are other people setting the line? And in some ways that's relevant, and in some ways it's not, because your boundaries are the boundaries that you need. They're the limits that make you feel safe and feel comfortable. They're based on your particular needs. So if you think about boundaries being based on something that you need, you can think, well, all humans have needs. They vary different, but they're basically the same, in terms of, like, we all have a basic need for physical needs such as food, clothing, shelter, sleep, things like that. We all need to feel safe, physically safe, emotionally safe. We all need to connect with other people in meaningful ways. We need to, have connection. We need to have friendships, so on and so forth. I'm not going to list every possible need, but the idea is that we all need basically the same things, but your needs are going to vary slightly from mine, or maybe more than slightly, in terms of our own personalities, our own histories. You might think about, like, a need for friendships, or a need for sexual intimacy, a need for trust. Some of these things might vary in terms of how much we need, and that's perfectly fine. So again, whatever the need is that you have, it's valid. There's nothing wrong with having needs, and those needs are going to inform the boundaries that you set. The other thing that's going to tell you when you need a boundary are the feelings that you're having. So if you pay attention to your feelings, they are generally going to let you know when something is off. So, for example, if you are feeling angry, frustrated, annoyed, resentful, those are all signs that you probably need a boundary, because probably somebody is doing something that is hurtful to you. Likewise, you might have a feeling that is, I feel hurt, or I feel afraid, or I feel tired, drained, run down, right? Those could be signs that you have a physical need for rest, or they could be a sign that you have an emotional need for respite also. So again, once you pay attention to those feelings, they're going to let you know, hey, a boundary is needed. And then we want to go back and look at, well, what's the need, right? What do I need in this situation? So let's just use an example here of, let's pretend that your mother is making a critical comment about your weight. Okay, and so you can identify what's the feeling that you are having. Again, it might be, I feel anger, or I might feel hurt in that situation. Perhaps it's something else, but those would certainly be two very common feelings to have in that situation. Then you think about, what's the need. And again, the need might be different between the two of us. I might say, I have a need for acceptance from my mother, or I need respect. Could be something else. But again, I'm saying, okay, here's what I need, and then I can decide how to approach the boundary. So usually we want to just very straightforward, calm, politely, in a kind, calm way, let somebody know what it is that we need from them and how we're feeling about the behavior that they're doing that is not okay with us. So I might say to my mother, it really hurts my feelings. I feel really bad about myself when you make these comments about my weight, and I'd like you to stop. Okay, that's straightforward. It's not accusatory or mean. I'm just letting her know, here's how I feel, and here's what I would like from her. But of course, Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, right? Which brings us to the next point of, well, what do you do if somebody steps over your boundary? They cross the line, they cross the limit that you have set. Now you need to decide, okay, well, what is the consequence, right? And so often the natural consequence of somebody doing something that's hurtful to us is that we want to pull back, right? I don't feel safe. I don't want to spend time around people who are critical of me, or hurtful of me in some other way. So sometimes that's an option. Sometimes it's not. But when you think about, like, well, what is the right consequence? What's a reasonable consequence? Well, I want you to think about, what's the relationship like with this person? What's the history there? In particular, what's the history in terms of boundary violations been like? If this is, generally a good relationship that I have with my mother, I'm pretty close to her, I value that relationship, and this seems like it's kind of a one-off type of situation, I'm going to handle it differently, right? The consequence then might just be that I'm going to repeat the boundary to her, and ask her again. But if this is, a relationship with my mother that is very strained and she is critical about many things or crosses many different types of boundaries, and I've asked her, over and over and over and over again, and she continues to cross them, right? Then obviously just repeating the same boundary is not working, right? So obviously we need a different kind of consequence. Right. So what that is, that's the difficult thing. And it's true. It's not a one size fits all. But I might think about, well, okay, if she's not listening to what I'm asking her to do, she's not willing to treat me with respect or to be accepting of who I am. What can I do now, right, to protect myself in that situation? Might it be that I don't invite her to my home, or maybe I don't talk to her on the phone as often, or maybe if we have family functions, I try to limit the time that I spend with her. I need to think about what I can do that's within my control, right? Because I can't make people do anything. I can't make them not be critical of me, right? But I can position myself away from them, or so that I'm spending a lot less time with them. But like I said, I can't force her to do something that she doesn't want to do. But it certainly is completely valid for me to say that I need respect or I need acceptance, and I need to, take the steps that are within my control, to make myself feel safe, so that I don't, end up in a situation where I continue to just be hurt. Because that's not good for me, obviously, and it's not good for the relationship. How are you going to have a positive relationship with somebody, if you're constantly feeling hurt and angry at them? Right? It's really not possible. So what it really is the point of the relationship, I think is something we need to ask ourselves. Why do we want to just go through the motions, spending time with people that we don't like spending time with, right? If they make us feel lousy about ourselves, right, we're obviously not doing that because it's filling us up, right? That it's actually meeting a need, a positive need, right? It might be meeting a different kind of need, right? Of trying to make somebody else happy, but it's certainly not working for me as an individual. So, I hope that gives you a little bit of insight in where you can start with some of your boundaries. I know it's not, a super specific answer to, well, what is the consequence? What is the thing that I do? But that often builds over time, right? We're going to sort of start smaller, with things, and we're often going to think about, well, how serious was the the boundary violation itself, right? We're obviously not going to use the same consequence for every single boundary violation, right? If the boundary violation is, somebody sits, uncomfortably close to me on the subway, I'm not going to use the same consequence that I'm going to use if my husband cheats on me, right? We're in two totally different realms of how serious those boundary violations are, right? So that's the other thing that you want to think about is, how big a deal is the boundary violation? How much damage has that caused? And the other thing that I want to just put out there as a reminder, I often say this and write about it frequently in my blog posts, is that the consequence is there. The purpose of it is to protect yourself. It's to get your needs met, to not leave you vulnerable. The purpose of the consequence is not to punish the other person, right? We're not just, making threats or doing things out of anger or spite so that they will suffer. What we want to do is choose a consequence that's going to give us the most protection from being hurt. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up because we're at the 10-minute mark, and I think that's enough for today. So, if you have more questions, you're welcome to put them in the comments here or over on my Facebook page, and I will try to get to them and answer as many of them as I can. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.